Koutou mā, tātou mā, tēnā tātou katoa. Welcome all and those here today. I'd like to start my talk today to introduce you to a beautiful Maori creation narrative. This is a story that talks about how we think and feel about our beginning. It starts off with Ranginui and Papatuanuku holding each other tight in the dark. Between them, many children were born. These children tired of being in a dark, cramped life with their parents, and so they decided that they needed to separate them. Through much discussion, Tāne Mahuta, he stretched his legs up and he pushed his father apart from his mother, pushing the father up into the sky to become Ranginui, our sky father, and his mother down to the earth to become Papatuanuku, or as we like to call her, Papa, our earth mother. As the light came in and the children flourished, they took on different roles as gods, and in our beliefs, Tāne Mahuta became the god of flora and fauna. Tangaroa became the god of sea and all sea creatures. And there was a god, Tū Toinga, who was the god of man and war, and that is where we as humans descend. So as you can see in this creation narrative as Maori, we intrinsically believe that we are connected by what we call whakapapa or genealogy as a family to not only ourselves as humans, but the environment and all that is around us. I liken this in the business world to be called a family-based mindset. It's a way that we think and act, either personally or professionally, in all that we do. We fully understand that the impacts our actions have on others and those around us. For every action, there is a reaction, whether that be positive or negative. And we're constantly trying to create positive impact for those around us that we love. I also liken it to being a feeling-based mindset. So we know how it feels when we do good by the things that we love. We feel it in our hearts and in our stomachs as Maori. And so we bring that into our personal and professional lives. We can, at times, of course, employ individualistic ways of thinking. But for us as Maori, that is a place that we can survive, but we won't thrive as individuals. We know that we can sustain that only for a short period of time before we need to bring in this family-based mindset, where we actually not only survive, but we also thrive as a people. I'd like you to take a moment just to pause and think about those things that you love and cherish. Think about that wider than just your family. Think about the environment and all of those things that make you feel good. For me, it's my family. It's being at the beach. It's things that are water-based. It's the colour blue. And it's also great food. Those are the things that I love. And often when I'm doing or being what I do, I think about how I can impact those positively and how good it makes me feel. It's that feeling of goodness that we have as Māori is what we bring that is unique into the business world, and especially that multi-layered, quite complex mindset we have about our interrelationship with the environment that is around us. Let me share a story with you of an entity that I had the privilege of being involved with. It is a health-based entity in a tough part of New Zealand with a high needs health demographic across a 200-kilometre area, delivering health services. Now, this entity had a rich history of providing great service to the people over a long period of time. However, through government policy and funding changes, the entity started to become sick itself. Its profits started to wane, and so did its return to the people and the services it delivered. So many minds were brought in to think about this entity around what might the solution be. And taking a pure profit focus, the consultants all said, well, it's really simple. You downscale your services to live within your means, and you'll correct or balance your books. Now, we were really blessed as a group of people to be asked to come on board to help this entity in its journey forward, taking on board that mindset, but equally being allowed to bring our own thoughts to the fore. We were really lucky that as a group of Māori with shared values and shared vision, we could bring a family-based mindset and a feelings-based mindset into how we projected forward the strategy for correcting that entity. Now, we knew we had to fix the profit problem, because that was a problem, and we did great strides over a 3-year period to get that right and to get the entity to break even. But we didn't do it in a way where we reduced services. We did it in a way where we actually asked to increase the funding to allow us to deliver the services that were in need. All the while we kept thinking of the people on the journey and thinking, well, if we're going to correct these books, we need to make sure that the return to the people is sustained and is there. Now you might wonder why we did that and why did we get so involved. It was many hours, it was a lot of voluntary work to correct that organisation. Well, we were all fundamentally driven by the fact that this demographic of people had a really high mortality rate. They died 10 years younger than the average New Zealander. In a New Zealand context, that means the people were dying in their 60s rather than in their 70s or early 80s. And these weren't just any people. For us, these were our whānau. These were our parents, our grandparents, our cousins. And for me personally, losing my grandmother at 62 was, at the time, I was young and hadn't appreciated how young she was. But that was a big loss for my family. That was a loss of knowledge. That was a loss of her native language for my family. So I thought to myself, well, you know, I need to get in and try and do something to make this right. We strategised, we brought in this family-based, feelings-based mindset. We took about a plan that balanced the people, the planet and the profit. And I'm so proud that after a 5-year journey, whilst we'd corrected the profit piece, we were also bringing returns to the people. The journey continues on for that entity now that I have stepped down and let another colleague take my place in that entity. The journey continues, but they're always striving forward to bring returns for the people with the ultimate goal of lifting that mortality rate. That was just a small story to share with you around how we actually bring to the fore this thinking into all that we do. But I often think, as a Maori accountant, you know, is this way of thinking and being unique to Maori? And I often look back and I look at some of our proverbs that we have, and it spoke to me that this is a real natural inherent way of being. And the one I came across is ko te ahau te taio, ko te taio ko ahau, which is I am the environment and the environment is me. But I further thought about that and thought, well, are we the only culture or people out there that think like this? And one day I happened to stumble across this quote from Albert Einstein, a profound thinker, who says some of the most simplest statements, but this for me summed it up. A human being is part of the whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature and its beauty. Nobody is able to achieve this completely, but the striving for such achievement is in itself a part of the liberation and a foundation for inner security. When I came across that statement, I had an epiphany that this is what we have inherent in us as Māori. Whilst we might have people challenge our beliefs and try and pull us into this individualistic way of thinking, we always have a natural way of coming back to thinking of ourselves as one with the universe. And it really spoke to me then about that good feeling that I get when I'm working collectively and doing great work with the whole and taking everyone on the journey or part of the journey as a larger group. So then I also had the privilege of becoming part of a group who could then say, well, if this is how we thought and this is how profound thinkers think, what's actually happening out in the Māori market? This year we ran a survey and we just asked those in business at the front line how they were going, how they were thinking and what were they doing. And the feedback was subtle but clear. They felt really comfortable that they were nailing the return to the planet and the people. But they could see a gap in the way they were being is that they weren't as focused on the profit piece. And the global pandemic taught them that to not have a fully sustainable platform with any one of those three out of line means that you could either be in or out of business quite quick. We have something here in New Zealand which does surprise me when people are surprised about it. It's called in New Zealand the tall poppy syndrome. So we don't often talk about profits and we don't like to promote or put ourselves above others. So it's a very uncomfortable conversation for us to have. But I'm really proud of my people that in the global pandemic they saw that this is an area that they need to work on. And so they instantly fixed their sights to say, how can we correct this to make sure we're resilient for the future? It'll be interesting to see, we'll run a survey next year to see how the market fared. The global pandemic is still playing out and everyone is in the midst of it. So what strategies are employed and what worked, we'll find out next year, and I really look forward to that. One thing that I did become aware of though is that on a global perspective, people typically had a pure profit focus quite high, and I see a moving towards bringing that down and lifting up the people and planet focus. So I'd like to hope that today, by sharing the story of the people out there learning that Maori do the inverse of what is happening globally, that you might learn something from our story today and take away a piece of that to help you in your thinking and how you act in business. So what I would ask you to do before I close off today is to take a moment to think about those things that you love and how good it feels to do good by them. Bring that thinking and feeling into your business and think about how your business actions and decisions are when you're at the forefront of providing services or bringing products to market, and what impact that will have for future generations, which will be your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren and your great-great-grandchildren. Think about what legacy you want to leave for them. I'll close the session with a very short proverb from the Maori world that I really love, that speaks to the gratitude that we often bring forth. And that is just to say that this talk today really is e iti noa ana nā te aroha. Today's talk is just a small thing given with love. Go well, be safe. Thank you for listening.